So there's been a lot of reporting on FEMA's response in Texas. Christy Noem went on Meet the Press to address some of it today. So this first article here is from CNN. Homeland Security Secretary Christy Noem, whose department oversees FEMA, recently enacted a sweeping rule aimed at cutting spending. Every contract and grant over $100,000 now requires her personal sign-off before any funds can be released. For FEMA, where disaster response costs routinely soar into the billions as the agency contracts with on-the-ground crews, officials say that threshold is essentially pennies, requiring sign-off for relatively small expenditures. As Central Texas towns were submerged in rising waters, FEMA officials realized they couldn't pre-position urban search and rescue crews from a network of teams stationed regionally around the country. In the past, FEMA would have swiftly staged these teams, which are specifically trained for situations including catastrophic floods closer to a disaster zone in anticipation of urgent requests, multiple agency sources told CNN. But even as Texas rescue crews raced to save lives, FEMA officials realized they needed Noem's approval before sending those additional assets. Noem didn't authorize FEMA's deployment of urban search and rescue teams until Monday, more than 72 hours after the flooding began, multiple sources told CNN. Trump approved a major disaster declaration for Texas on Sunday, July 6th. By Monday night, only 86 FEMA staffers had been deployed, according to internal FEMA data seen by CNN, a fraction of the typical response for a disaster of this scale. So this is what Christy Noem said in part about the idea that FEMA had not responded promptly to the need.
Just an hour or two after the flooding, Within just an hour or two after the flooding, we had resources from the Department of Homeland Security there helping those individuals in Texas. It was a heartbreaking scene, and I think it's been well covered about what the Coast Guard did, how they were deployed immediately and helped rescue so many individuals from those floodwaters. And we had Border Patrol down there with their tactical teams, and FEMA was there just within a few hours as well. So those claims are false. They're from people who won't put their name behind those claims. And those call centers were fully staffed and responsive. And this was the fastest, I believe, in years, maybe decades, that FEMA has been deployed to help individuals in this type of a situation.
All right, so she really fits in with the Trump administration because we've seen a lot of these fruitcakes bullshit, but she really bullshits like the boss. That's a very Trump thing where clearly FEMA dropped the ball and just displayed deadly incompetence in this situation. To just go ahead, that's very Trump-esque. Yeah, no, this was the best response in the history of FEMA. Everybody's saying it. I had a call from the Prime Minister in England. He said, wow, how did you do such a fast response like that? No way, Joe Biden could never have done that. Like, just absolute bullshit pouring out of her. But this was even more damning. This was the New York Times. This dropped on Friday. FEMA didn't answer thousands of calls from flood survivors, documents show. On July 5th, as floodwaters were starting to recede, FEMA received 3,027 calls from disaster survivors and answered 3,018, or roughly 99.7%, the documents show. Contractors with 4 call center companies answered the vast majority of the calls. That evening, however, Ms. Noem did not renew the contracts with the 4 companies, and hundreds of contractors were fired, according to the documents and the person briefed on the matter. The next day, July 6th, FEMA received 2,363 calls and answered 846, or roughly 35.8%, according to the documents. And on Monday, July 7th, the agency fielded 16,419 calls and answered 2,613, or around 15.9%, the documents show. So she was asked about this, and this is what she had to say.
In Texas that was there, that was a part of this operation, they would say the federal government and President Trump immediately responded.
Just to be very clear, on July 7th, 15.9% of calls were answered. I mean, does that concern you that only 15% of calls were answered? These are people in a desperate state. FEMA, often the first call that they make, only 15% were answered on July 7th, several days after the floods.
These contracts were in place and those people were in those call centers and they were picking up the phone and answering these calls from these individuals. So that report needs to be validified. I'm not certain it's accurate and I'm not sure where it came from. And the individuals who are giving you information out of FEMA, I'd love to have them put their names behind it, because the anonymous attacks to politicize this situation is completely wrong. I care. These emergencies need to be conducted exactly how President Trump handled this one. It was that the local responders are the ones who execute the response. The state comes in and manages it. And then the federal government comes in and supports it. And as soon as Texas asked for anything, we were there.
Just very quickly, I mean, disasters often cost millions, if not billions of dollars. You've acknowledged there is this policy you implemented to sign off on contracts that exceed $100,000. Why add extra red tape when there is a crisis of this magnitude?
It's not extra red tape. It's making...
Because they're trying to wipe you all out.
It is to make it harder to get help from the government. That is the purpose of work requirements for Medicaid, to make it harder to get help from the government. That is the point. Now, they are so determined to beat up the people who voted for them, take them by the ankles, turn them upside down, and shake them for loose change. They will never say, why is all this money going to these defense contractors? Why do these billionaires hardly pay any taxes? They're never going to look under those couch cushions. They are so determined to kill their own voters, to destroy the very people largely that voted for them, who live in these disaster areas, that they have taken the Secretary of Homeland Security, who has a very broad portfolio covering many different areas. She's very busy. She's not very competent, but she's very busy. She has a lot of different things to do, and decided to micromanage the approval of FEMA payments, something an assistant far below her should be doing. Why? To make it harder to get that money. They want to break all of these institutions so that people can't get anything from them.
That's it's almost like they want to wipe you out. Almost like it's not so much the human grass frog hybrid that they breed in a cow uterus. It's almost like just like sabotaging FEMA, right? Like that's how they're trying to take you out. So
exactly.
So if that reporting is accurate, it's just unbelievable. So
hang on,
July 5th,
let's
yeah, hold on. Let me just say this one thing. On July 5th, they got 3,027 calls. They answered 3,018. On July 6th, they got 2,300 calls, and they answered 846. So the day after, they had fewer calls, but only answered a third of them. That's nothing if not sabotage. It has to be.
Of course
what other explanation?
You got fewer calls, and then it got worse after
calls.
that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because they didn't renew the contract because they created this new micromanagement rule where she has to individually sign off on every little thing, which is just not feasible for somebody with her other responsibilities to do in a timely manner.
Yeah.
Making sure everything is getting to my level and that it's immediately responded to. This was not slowed down at all. In fact, it was much more responsive. If you remember, I was there. I was standing right there long before this report ever came out, and people were asking and we were granting permission in real time. So the false reporting has been something that is inappropriate, and it's something that I think we need to clear up, and that this response was by far the best response we've seen out of FEMA, the best response we've seen out of the federal government in many, many years, and certainly much better than what we saw under Joe Biden.
Whoever wrote that story should be in jail.
Well, yeah, it's always somebody did something wrong.
Yeah.
We're aggrieved. The vague threat that the weight of the government should be brought to bear on whoever did this and revealed our criminality. And wow, man, but she's quite an acolyte of the boss, man. That is very Trumpy. Yeah, It was the best ever. Everyone's saying it was the best response ever. Speaking of which, this should be no surprise to anybody. You might remember this was Donald Trump. He made a big show of how Biden had fumbled the ball in North Carolina.
And I think we take it very personally because North Carolina was very unfairly treated. Very, very unfairly treated. And it was obvious. It was too obvious. And we're going to make up for lost time. So thank you to the people of North Carolina. Thank you, everybody.
So then from there he went and he did a big photo op where he got people from North Carolina to come up to the microphone and tell their stories of how badly they were treated by FEMA under Joe Biden. And what does he do once he has the power to help these people? Trump just denied North Carolina's request for FEMA relief from Hurricane Helene, calling it unwarranted. He used you as a prop, folks. I hate to say it. You don't deserve it. It's terrible what happened to these people. But this fucking scumbag put you up in front of a microphone for political advantage. And this is how much he actually cares about you. And the people of North Carolina voted for him, particularly in the areas hardest hit by the hurricane. So what did you think he was going to do once he got into office? These people hate you. They hate you. The only thing that you are good for to them is power. Insofar as they need you, so at least for now, they need your votes. You know, they'll feed you raw meat. They'll tell you that they're going to improve your life by, riding on horseback through MacArthur Park and going after people in places you don't live and people you don't know and show how they're going to be brutalized and surrounded by alligators. They're going to throw you those breaded circuses while they dismantle what is left of the social safety net. Much of Trump's base is particularly reliant on those services like FEMA, like Medicaid. By the time people wake up, it's going to be too late. They already passed this bill. Do you know what it's going to take to try to get those services restored after they've been destroyed this way? I've been saying it again and again. AI is coming. Automation coupled with AI is going to be capable of replacing a lot of the labor force. The ruling class has no interest in keeping you alive, not through healthcare, not through disaster relief, not through anything. These people are trying to kill you. Any division between the so-called left and the so-called right at this point is entirely beside the point. It is us against them. As Warren Buffett famously said, yeah, there's a class war and my side's winning. They're winning. They're winning. And now this is the end game. They are trying to kill you. That is not an exaggeration. They want you dead. You're going to keep clapping like a seal for whatever the fuck Alex Jones is talking about, tardigrades shot up your dick to make you radioactive proof or whatever the fuck he's on about. I mean, you're going to get, I don't want to say what you deserve, but by ignoring this, you're setting yourself up for the slaughter.
Well, it's a death cult at this point. I mean, that's literally what it is. That's literally what it is. How could anyone in this town, how could anyone in these towns in Texas that have been flooded, their kids washed away?
Right.
How could they ever vote for this anymore? How could they ever support this anymore? How? Unless you hate yourself.
Right.
You know, I mean, that's
Well,
the
which a
only
lot
answer.
of people do. A lot of
Yeah.
people, their minds are broken, man.
Yep, exactly. That's what it is. That's what it is. And as for the political consequences of this, you know, I was listening to what the gray zone guys were talking about this a little bit. I heard a little bit, and I might be fuzzy on some of the details. They're having one of these big conferences in what is it, Sun Valley, Idaho? That's like the big resort town up there. It's kind of like a Jackson Hole, Wyoming, Aspen, Colorado type place. A very wealthy place in the middle of nowhere. And they're having like essentially like a mini kind of Bilderberg conference. I forget what it's called. And they have Alex Karp is going to be there from Palantir, and they have Chuck Schumer there, and they have a couple of these prominent Democrats. I think Wes Moore, the guy from Maryland, who they're going to try and make a big thing out of. They're going there. It's almost like the Alex Karps know that they ran the Republican Party into the ground in order to get this bill passed. Okay, so they serve their purpose. Yeah, they're not going to really. So now we're going to start vetting Democrats to see who will play ball when power changes hands. Right? It's almost like they know how politically damaging this is, but they don't care. They did it anyway. Right? They're talking about maybe trying to pass another mega bill this fall. Why do you think the Republicans want to do that? Because I think they realize, you know what? In a year from now, it's going to be hard to get these bills passed. So we better do it now. And then the real bosses will vet the Democrats who will play ball going, you know, down the road, so that when the pendulum swings,
and pretend they're going to undo it, and they'll undo it 10%.
Exactly.
Please clap.